Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast. For men and women at mid-career or the halftime of life with issues that concern you. Maximize your skills, resources, and experience to live an even more fulfilling and significant second half of life. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson, on Women at Halftime podcast.
Well, hello. This is Greg and Deb here today. We are with another session for our Women at Halftime podcast, and we're talking today about a really, really fun subject. We just got back from South Africa, which was quite the journey for us, and we're doing a little recap on some of the things that we learned by being there and just from traveling there. So thanks for being with me today to share this.
Sure. Hi, everybody.
We're just going to have a fun conversation about it. And the first thing I want to really cover is how important it is to plan for trips like this. As people are just starting to get back into doing more travel, it was quite a trip to plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of details, but not to back away from some of these as the years go by very quickly. And so I just kind of want to encourage everyone as they are watching this or listening to it too. So we were there we did was it an 11-day, 12-day tour type of thing where we went on a lot of safari rides. And we also did a very active tour. So by doing that, we did some bike riding and also did quite a bit of hiking. So we're going to kind of go through some of the things that were just highlights for us and in this trip. So what was one of the highlights for you, Greg?
Well, this is going to sound surprising, but living near LA, we don't see the stars that much. And, being out in the wilderness with the animals, one of the things that's very pronounced is the starlight and being able to see the galaxies and the constellations. We were in the southern hemisphere, so the Southern Cross was up every night, and the sky was just spectacular.
It really was. And it's interesting, anywhere in the world that you go we're halfway around the world. It's a long flight to South Africa. Long. I want to emphasize that, from Southern California. So, but being halfway around the world and just still seeing the constellations and seeing all of the...
Yeah, it kind of reminds you that the world is one place.
Yeah. That was really interesting. So, well, another thing that really struck me was the variety of the animals that we saw. And it was really pretty amazing as you think about how they were all created. There was just something a little different about each one of them, the different antelopes and what they eat, what their horns were like, from the straight horns. I think it was the onyx that had those straight ones. Right. And then you have the maleficents. Those were the hartebeest. Hartebeest. Yes. And there was so much variety.
Yeah, what was interesting about the variety is how the system all worked together.
It sure did.
Some were keeping the grass down. The elephants kind of kept the trees short.
They definitely did.
The lions and leopard kept the impala population down.
Right.
So it was fascinating to see how it all worked together. It was also being in an open Jeep. You suddenly are immersed in it. It's not like being in a zoo at all.
Right.
You're very much a part of the environment, right. And it's a profound experience.
Yes.
It stays with you.
Yeah, it really does. And we just had some great guides. They did not back off of going straight down some of those little paths.
Yeah, those of you who've been on an Indiana Jones ride in the Land Cruiser. So we were in a Land Cruiser that would sit maybe 8. But try to imagine the jerkiness of Indiana Jones, but this was more jerky and lasted 3 hours.
Yeah.
So each time we went out on a safari, it was a 3-hour Jeep ride.
Yeah.
And Debbie is not exaggerating. There were times where we were going straight down we were, laying
Yeah.
sideways.
And holding on.
No
Holding
seatbelts.
on.
You're just
No,
holding
yeah.
on to the roll bar.
Yeah, you're holding on the roll bar, and they would say, "Okay, everybody, hold on," and tree ahead.
Yeah.
So
That's what they call entertainment in South Africa.
So then you'd have one of the spotters. Well, we just had a spotter and a driver. So the tree ahead. So he's holding back the tree, so that's not. I mean, literally, we are ducking way down to be able to miss that. So. That was, I mean, you're probably at the end of that time, we're pretty tired. But it's exhilarating too with the number of animals we saw. And in these reserves, we'll talk about this too, and how they provide work for people and how the animals are used to those vehicles. And they're used to.
They grow up with the vehicles, so they know that they're not predators.
Right.
They know that they're not prey. So you get very close to the animals.
You sure do. And you have to be very quiet.
It was interesting. Like the first day, we're maybe 20 feet away from a lioness. Mm-hmm. And I am, thinking to myself, that lion can jump into this Jeep without any problem at all. And, by the third or fourth day, we're driving through the jungle, ducking under branches, and it's becoming normal life. That was fun.
Yes, and then when the leopard went right by us, and
a leopard went underneath our Jeep.
Yeah, we just kind of just sat there, and there,
He didn't feel like walking around. He just took a shortcut.
Yeah, and so we just knew to be very, very quiet. And we did do some bike rides, but in the actual reserve,
you don't do bike rides.
Well, they said we could.
Oh.
But in the first reserve we were at, but actually I was going to be the only one that would have done the bike ride on that day.
The bike ride was kind of right out of camp, and it wasn't too far into the jungle.
Yeah, it wasn't, but it was extremely muddy, and our guide told me, he said, okay, you can do this if you'd like, but it's very muddy, and the path is a little tough, which was an understatement, and if an elephant, they're very, very quiet. And if an elephant comes up beside you, you have to get away from there really, 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 really fast. And I thought, I'm going to just stay in the Jeep.
So Deb has a lot of endurance on a bike.
I actually do.
But maybe not quite as much acceleration.
No. So that did not appeal to me, to have to get away really, 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 really fast. So, but just the beautiful, like even the color of the birds as well. I mean, we can look around us, and I've worked with a student before that was a biologist. She what kind of biologist? That's the animal.
I don't know, but she was able to name every bird.
Almost every bird. Our guide actually was a walking encyclopedia with the birds and the animals and all of that. And actually, stay tuned with this podcast because I am going to be interviewing him on one of these weeks.
Yeah, we'll just give a shout out to Backroads because the guides on those trips tend to be really well informed and really pleasant to be with. So shout out to Backroads.
Yes, and it was just an amazing experience for that because the experience that they brought and gave to us and how well they took care of us. But the variety of also even the birds of
spectacular.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the real memories I had as well in these guides, how well they know the terrain. What we would do this was the last couple days that we did like 4 different safari rides. You do one early in the morning, so you get up while it's dark, and you're leaving right when it's sunrise, so you can see the animals get up. And then you do another one at night, right when it starts getting dusk until it's completely dark. And so you have a spotter in front with a flashlight. But we're going down this path, and they said, "Oh, stop!" And there's a chameleon in a tree. They found this twice. It's a green chameleon on a green tree. And they saw this. How do they see
And they
this?
did it twice.
Twice. It's like, did you plant that there? I mean, no, but you can't plant these. I mean, they're just... So it was really amazing how well these guides know.
Yeah.
They know the animals because they knew, well, that's the animal that's the leopard that was born a couple years ago. Now it's getting a little older. And so they really care with the conservation with the land as well. So that was another.
Speaking of variety of birds, though, so not only were we on safari and we saw the big five, so the lion, elephant, leopard, hippo, rhinoceros. We also saw in Cape Town, which is the very southern tip of South Africa, we saw penguins.
Penguins.
And they weren't the big emperor penguins, but they were penguins. And, watching them waddle into the water. It was spectacular.
I mean, I'm thinking, we're not at the North Pole. We're in South Africa. And it was really interesting. This is another thing I learned, because you learn a little bit more about geography, and this is a wonderful thing if you ever can take your kids traveling, which we've done camping and things. We've never done a trip like this with our kids, but I learned even at that Cape where the two oceans the sides come together, where there's one warmer side and one's cooler side, and so you get one side that has so much current, and it was windy, and it was the waves, it was a lot of current, and the other side it was warmer and it was just calm like glass, and it was right there together. So that was really an interesting sort of scenario to actually look at, because we got to be at an huge elevated position. We did that long hike, and then we got to see both of those spots. And I'm really glad that we did this active tour too, because we saw more than you would just see driving around. Right. Yeah, we got to actually be out, because when you walk around, when you ride a bike, when you hike, you see so much more. So that's, at this point in our life, I'm trying to book these type of tours to where we can see. This wasn't really on the bucket list. Just the reviews on it were so amazing. And after I told some people that we were going to South Africa, all of a sudden I have some of these friends go, "Oh, I've gone. I've gone. Oh, I want to see those pictures." And they can't wait to go back. And that was interesting. I'm thinking, really? It was, and now, remembering all of this, it was just such a spectacular trip. So now I want to kind of move along, and we can come back to some of those animals, because they really were, I mean, that's a big part of this, were the animals, but also in some of the different locations. And the time that we went, a couple of them, they were just starting to open up.
Right.
And they were so grateful for the work.
They were just starting to open up after COVID. So we were, I think, on the first tour after the country had been shut down for COVID.
Right. They were so grateful for the work and for us even being there. And to me, with so many that are going, "Oh, do I want to work, or do I, or that's not the type of thing." They were and they worked extremely hard. Yeah. And to see this country where, what was the unemployment?
Unemployment rate was 34%.
Yeah, huge. And so these people were so grateful for the work.
And if you're watching this later, this was April of 2022.
Yes.
Just to date it.
Yes. Oh, that's good. Thank you. And they would work, I asked, because a lot of them lived 8 to 10 hours away. Right. They would work 22 days in a row, and then they'd get off 8 days, something like that. And they'd all live there at those locations. So they would have buildings that were for the staff where they would be living. Right. So, but it was.
But I think your point was they worked hard, but were extremely grateful.
Yes.
For it.
Yes, they were. And they knew the situation there, and they would be able to go see families. Some of them have families, and that they were away from their families. One of the places that we were at were, hopefully I can say this right, Londolozi. Mm-hmm. It was it was our last place, and our guide had said, "Okay, so this is the resort of resorts. It's really nice." But they are not only a game reserve, they're like a private reserve within a very larger reserve.
Yeah, it was a private reserve inside Kruger National Park. Yeah. And what the South Africa had done in the early 90s, earlier than that, was carve out about 400 miles by 150 miles of land where you couldn't poach. The animals could just roam. Mm-hmm. And then what's developed along the road is private reserves will carve out multiple thousand square miles of that they roam by Jeep, and everybody kind of respects one another's Jeep trails.
Right.
And then what was great about Landalosi was the story of Dave Vardy's family. They had his dad had won this property like in a tennis game in the 1930s, and it was like out in the middle of nowhere, and he just fell in love with it. He started taking his two boys out there, 4 times a year. And then the dad died when Dave was 15 and his older brother was 17. And the mom didn't know what to do with the property, so she was going to sell it. The two boys, still in high school, said, "Mom, don't sell it. We're going to turn it into something." She said, "What?" And they go, "We don't know yet." She goes, "Well, you got to go to college first." So they went to college, and then when they finished college, they approached her with a business plan.
Yeah.
And she goes, "That's great, but you got to pay me monthly. So this thing has got to make money." So what they decided to do was to start doing tours of the animals, and everything was camera, no shooting. And what they realized, and this was key, is late in the 80s, what they realized is that the money they were bringing in was hiring people in the community around it. Mm-hmm. So they were having a positive footprint on the human community around the park. And then they got intentional and started sourcing things and asking people in the community if they could grow this or if they could make these materials. And so the footprint got bigger. And then what clinched it all is when Nelson Mandela finally got out of prison, was elected, one of the first stops he made was to Landalosi, because he had heard about what was going on. So Dave gave him a tour, and when he finished, he said privately to Dave, I want to implement this model throughout South Africa. And Dave thought, well, that's great. Like 3 weeks later, Mandela is at a environmentalist convention to talk on the environment in Africa. And he announces that he's going to model South Africa after Landalosi. And Dave's sitting there going, really? I mean, he had no idea that was coming. Yeah. So Landalosi's been on the map since 1994 when Nelson Mandela made that announcement. And, a lot of good has happened. Mandela's dream is, wavering a little bit, but in some places it's doing quite well, and Landalosi happens to be one of those.
And it was really cool because we got to hear directly from Dave Vardy.
Yeah, we got to hear the story direct from Dave.
And in fact, we sat there and it was like over too soon. We had to leave to catch our plane.
It was too bad.
It was such a thrill. He has written a book, so I feel
Dave
like
was a true entrepreneur. He's not a nonprofit guy.
No.
He realizes that by making money, he can expand the community.
Right.
He looked, so he's about our age. I'm not going to give his age away, but he looks like he could have starred in Endless Summer. Yeah. I mean, he just has that adventuresome, playful look about him, even in his late 60s. So
and he's wearing shorts and his, just a normal shirt and just talking to us. It was so great. And we got to see the compound where, I should say compound, but it was really great. They had separate little huts, and this is where the staff
I think
live.
They called it a village.
A village. They did call it the village. So they have little separate residences but everybody eats together at a central place. They don't let them cook in those separate little places because they said they could set them on fire if they were,
They have a fairly sophisticated healthcare office.
Yes.
Their own school.
Yes.
They
have a preschool, and they're able to bring the other kids out to other schools, and they have the places to eat. They've got entertainment. They've got the big screens and all that. And they have a computer center for all of the learning.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so they can progress. And so to be at different levels, whether you're going to be a guide or you're going to be a spotter or you're going to be whatever. So and these people, they stay there for a lot of years.
Yeah,
they just really,
like our guide had been there 18 years.
Yeah, for a lot of years. So they were really happy to see us. So it was just hearing, and to me, it was so great to hear the story and how that even made it more special.
It really did, yeah.
It's a really good illustration for all of us that are in business, that we have a story and how the story can bring, what you are doing to life. And to us, it made us think, wow, every day that people stay there, they are supporting, and they have this on their website, they are supporting like 15 workers. They're supporting 8 animals. They're supporting, so every night that people stay, because their dollars go a lot farther there than here. So it's really nice what they are doing for the whole community there.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yep.
And it was really fun. In one of the other places that we stayed too, they grow 80% of their food. That was Summerfields.
Yeah, Summerfield.
And they grow macadamia trees, and we got to hear about how they do the macadamia nuts and how they have learned in those and the other I think it's the lychee tree, or I might pronounce that wrong, but they've learned how they can make money off of those trees because they were going to tear them down.
Right.
And so they've learned how to be self-sustaining in a lot of these areas and employ people all around the community. So that was wonderful to see. It wasn't just this sort of just vacation. We got to hear how, some of the history. We kept extremely busy.
We got to experience the community and not just the jungle. So
what was really special to me, and the organization we traveled with, Backroads, supported the school as well, one of the schools, and they actually built one of the classrooms, which was gorgeous. It was a separate building. But the kids, historically, a lot of the kids were just boys. They were not girls, because the girls had to stay home and help with the family and with the washing and the laundry. There was so much to do all day. But now there are more girls now starting to come through school. And the 3rd grade, there are so many needs there for education. The 3rd grade class that we visited had 85 kids in it for one teacher. But the kids were so appreciative. They had a song for us, and they came up afterwards. We love you. We love you. We love. There was so much gratefulness, appreciative. Our kids here have so much. They were just so happy to see us. And it wasn't, it's like, the people or the kids that kind of just pass things off these days, of just, because there's so much in this country that we have. But these kids, they don't have a lot. And they're trying to earn money. And I felt like buying all of their little souvenirs, which I didn't even want, but just to help support the school, because they were just trying to support the school. And so you feel for these people that are just trying to earn anything and sell anything. They want you to do that. So it kind of tugs at your heart a little bit. But it was really special seeing that school for me, because I've been in education as well. So that was a really wonderful thing. So. Yeah, so as we think about the animals and the whole protection of it, and the game reserve, and just I thought about like the circle of life, pretty much. I mean, I've worked for Disney for so many years. That's one of the songs that you do from The Lion King. But you really see it out there, because you see which animals are going to eat, like the elephants, they eat off all of the top of the trees. I mean, you can know where the elephants were, because everything's like
eye level to an elephant.
Yeah. It's just up there. And the giraffes, they're just way up, and the giraffes, it was interesting finding out even more about them, because they sleep on their knees, and so they're going to sleep in an open area because they have to get up and run from something, fast. And how, of course, they eat, they're way up there as they eat. and how there were so many animals that were prolific, such as the
Impala.
Yes, the impala and the springbok.
Oh yeah,
The springbok. We called them hamburger because there were a lot of them, and so they're fast, but they're good food for some of those animals that eat the meat. And the guinea fowl. Guinea fowl were another. Apparently, they don't have a ton of meat on them, but they are food, and they were very prolific as well.
But they were beautiful. They were kind of like, if you can imagine doves out in a field, and so they didn't fly much, they ran mostly, but they had these gorgeous fluorescent purple necks. It was just spectacular.
Like a blue purple, they were just so beautiful. So we called them chicken nuggets.
Right.
And they ran really fast. And it's just kind of interesting how you see how these animals survive, like the scavengers, like the baboons. I didn't even want to know what they were eating at some point because they eat everything. And the hyenas.
The hyenas. One of the fun things I think you wanted to tell everybody about was that you had worked hard in advance of this.
Yes.
So that newsletters were still going out,
right.
Podcasts were still being produced.
Right.
Even while you were traveling for 2 weeks.
It was. And it was some work. I helped people do this in their businesses. But it takes work to be able to do it. I know the work that it takes. But at this point in our lives, too, we want to travel more together. Now, a lot of people have traveled so much for business. And actually, I have traveled. We both have traveled
a lot for business.
Yes, we've both done that. But traveling together at this point in our life is really what we wanted to do while we have this window of time.
Right.
Hopefully, we're trying to keep staying in shape so we can do these the active tours. It's a good goal, actually. But I worked extremely hard and made sure when I got back, I had immediately other work on my plate, quite a bit of work. So I had to make sure that still my podcasts were done and they were scheduled, and my newsletters were done and scheduled. All of those things that don't always just make money, but it's a part of my business.
Yeah, but they weren't just scheduled. They actually got published.
Yes, they got actually, because I scheduled them to be published. And actually I published a few before so I could just schedule them.
Yeah.
So I didn't even have to, because we didn't know if we would have good internet. But you have to figure out how these things are going to work, especially with, how to do it on social media and all of that. Or your newsletters. Your newsletter is very important because that's your property, I always say. And some of these social media, they can change the algorithms and all of that all the time. We still need to use them, but we want to make sure they're on our property. But I worked extremely hard to be able to do that, and it did work. And in fact, trips coming up. And that's where I emphasized at the beginning of this that you have to plan ahead for these trips. People have been putting things off. I didn't want to put things off. Actually, I ended up calling every week on this tour, wondering if it was going to happen every single week.
Yeah, because the Omicron variant started, and we thought, oh no,
this is actually
South Africa going to overreact and shut the country down.
We were sure of that. No, I think we're still on. And I didn't make our airline reservations until a little bit closer, because that was a big step. But I'm so glad that we did this, because as I think now, would we go on this trip in another 5 years, especially an active tour like this, as active tour? There was one hike that we took, was supposed to be 2 hours. It ended up being 3.5 hours. It was a tough hike.
The destination was gorgeous. It was worth the effort, but it was a tough hike.
It was a tough hike. The reason it was so tough were the variables that you can't plan on.
Right.
They had a lot of rain, a whole lot of rain. And so what happened was it got real muddy and the grass grew like a foot. So we had to, and Greg's got size 14 feet, and we were on slippery rocks, and it's wet, slick, and you're looking for the path. And so it was a little slower coming all the way through there, and we had to be very careful through all of it. And we didn't even know if we would be able to cross at the normal place because there had been so much water. would we be able to
yeah.
get across. So we found a couple rocks where we didn't have to totally wade through a stream. But it was a joy when we got there. I will just say that, and we really enjoyed our lunch, our
Yes.
very
Yeah,
late lunch.
did.
We were very
Yeah.
thirsty. We were very hungry, but it was a magnificent, and we had just come from hiking through the rainforest, and then we were the land is so different in different places. See, I thought Africa, this was another thing I did not realize, and it might surprise some of you listeners because you're thinking, oh, of course I knew this. I didn't realize that Africa was just all these different countries. I mean, they're actually countries.
Yeah, that Africa's a continent, and
Yes.
there's lots of countries inside of it. Yeah.
But it's not like states. I mean, that's what I sort of thought. But when you go to the different country, okay, there's the passport, there's the luggage, there's they're
Yeah,
looking
and they
at
have their
everything
own
again.
money.
Yeah, their own money, and you have to go through all of that again. And the size of the airports are a lot different than here, but it was really cute. I have one picture of our international airport that's just this little shed out there on
Yeah.
the landing strip. But it was really I just kind of wanted to recap some of our impressions and to me, seeing the variety. I mean, we're a strong believer in a higher power and of a God, and just the different aspects of creation and of the different animals and the variety, and how you try to explain some of this away and how they all came up, but there's no explaining in some of this. There is just none. The different grasshoppers that are locusts and then the birds and it's just an endless variety that you see, and you see that there's so much creativity behind that. And so as I focused on to me that's inspiring, with all of the vastness of the creation and of creativity in our world. And now, of course, there's all these talks about going to different planets and all that. It's wonderful. But don't discount getting to know our country as well, because it's really amazing in all these different places. And the people, just getting to know some of the people. And I think I will say for a long time, yes, that was the yes, and zebra instead of zebra. There are the little accents that they do, but it was charming and just very fun. Well, so what are do you have some things to sum up of one of your favorite things that you experienced?
Well, one of my favorite things, like I said, was the star. Probably the second was the treehouse we stayed in over the river.
Yeah.
With the canvas tent over us, the luxurious bed, but the whole bathroom, the sink, the shower, and the bath were all outside.
Outside.
So it was spectacular.
Yes,
Maybe Deb
it
will
was.
share a picture.
Yeah, the outside bathroom, no one could see it because we were right there at the river. And you didn't want to go down to the river because the hippos live there, and you do not want to get close to a hippo. So they were very, very, they will come at you.
That was one of my favorites. How about you?
Yeah. I think just the learning more, like how many muscles are in the trunk of an elephant. That was different. And I got to see a lion. Now this was, couple things. Got to the choir. There was a surprise they had for us in us being able to, a choir did some special numbers for us, and they had shells that were attached to their feet. So that was their rhythm. They had great harmonies, and we were in a room. Of course, there was a tin roof, so that it was wonderful acoustics. But and the men could really sing. I mean, they were, you know, some of us that are singers, we could have helped those sopranos a little bit, but they could really sing, and their harmonies were very strong, and that was really fun. And I guess we heard another little group later, I did at least, and one of the things they add to the music are these whistles, and they were so off tune. But it was one of the things, they just loved the whistles. They would just keep blowing the whistles right when they were singing. They had great harmonies though. That was kind of fun. So, but that was a highlight, and also seeing the lion carry his prey that was wildebeest that he had killed, but hyenas were all around him trying to scavenge and see if the lion would leave it, so they could get some food. But the lion was trying to carry this back to the lionesses, and there were, the lionesses. There were 3 lionesses, so with the cubs, and he would have loved to get it. There was no way because it was way too far. But I just seeing the lion try to do this was very impactful for me because the lion was out of breath, and he would stop, and you could see him just breathe, and then he'd go a little farther and then just breathe, just struggling. And it shows how some people just, it's a good example of life and how there's a lot of struggle sometimes just to survive and to provide for those around us. So that was impactful for me too. So there was just so much. So, but anyway, I think that kind of sums us up.
Okay.
This was a great time to be able to share with you all. I really wanted to do that. And make sure you connect with me, that you get my book, The Summit. I have a couple books. This is a great one, Going to Hero Mountain. And The Journey to Hero Mountain, it's an allegory. And of course, Women at Halftime, that explains all the cables of success going to Hero Mountain as well. Those are great. They're both on audiobook as well as on ebook and hardcover and paperback. But the newsletter is goalsforyourlife.com, all together, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. And then, of course, womenathalftime.com, DeborahJohnsonSpeaker.com. I'm starting to book some live events. Would love to come to your organization. If that works out, I also do virtual. Love doing what I do and to be able to share how you can really get out of a roundabout, being stuck in a roundabout. That's a great principle. And to keep on your journey to your own hero mountain, to your summit. Thanks again for being with us today. We love this, and I will look forward to being with you then next week and next time. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. Share and follow us for new shows to inspire you and encourage you in your life's journey. You can find all of our articles and links at womenathalftime.com.